Welcome to The Connection Code, a podcast where we explore the relationships that make your life and work just a little bit better.
I'm Jeana Anderson Cohen, and I've spent more than 13 years building a business that tricks adults into making friends through fitness called A Sweat Life. And I'm also building a social gathering and event space in New Buffalo, Michigan called Petite Acres. I love friendship and gathering.
And you're so good at that. You're such a facilitator of friends and gathering.
Thank you.
I am Rachel Gilman Rischall. I guess what I'm good at is getting people to buy healthy food. I run a PR firm called 3PR. I work with good for you food brands. And then as my niece said over the holidays, Aunt Ray, is your job just like selling chips? And I said,
Sort of.
And oats and salads. Let's
Very
not keep it
good
narrow.
chips.
Yes, very good chips. Thank you, Siete.
Yeah.
So that's what I do. And I introduce people because that's my hobby.
And today's big question is about finding meaning. This very much so ladders up to our guest today, whose work is about meaning, the soul, finding beauty in life moments, big and small. So I wanted to know, Rachel, I know you look for signs in life. Is there some person, place, thing, or awe-inspiring moment that helped you find a nugget of meaning in this life?
I'm like ready to dive into this one. When you sent me this question, I was like, I am so ready. I have a tale. So I will try to keep it condensed. But I had the most incredible sign moment happen over the holidays. So to set the stage, there's a very respected medium named Laura Lynn Jackson who has a book called Signs that was a bestseller. And she has a new book that I believe is called Guides. And she's been on her promo tour. So her and Oprah just had a couple conversations, and my Instagram feed loves to surface this content. So I watch Laura say that if you want to connect with loved ones on the other side, don't just ask for a sign, ask for a highly specific sign. Really be intentional. And she made kind of a passing remark about it could even be a pink dolphin. And that lodged in my brain. So I go home to Minnesota for Thanksgiving, which is my favorite holiday. It's peak family. But ever since my grandparents have passed on my mom's side, Millie and Maury, we always feel their absence acutely. We love them. We remember them. We talk about them. The women in my family are very spiritual, and we're always bringing them up and kind of speaking them into existence in the room. So it was the Monday night of Thanksgiving week, and I'm with my cousin Mira, and I tell her about the sign idea. And I said, so I think for Millie and Maury, my sign is going to be a panda, maybe a purple panda. And we just sort of laughed because it was so silly. It has nothing to do with who they are, but I just landed on it. Well, I only said this to Mira. And then the next day was Tuesday before Thanksgiving. And my sister teaches English as a second language in an elementary school. And I traditionally take the twins to her school, and we meet some of the cute kids, and we serve pie, and we just have a little moment. So as we're walking into the school, I say to the twins, I have the sign for Millie and Maury. It's pandas, maybe purple pandas. It'd be so funny if we saw something. It just kind of came out of my mouth walking into the school. And my sister had no idea. So we go in, and her colleague is out. So my sister decided to move her groups of students into this open room that she doesn't typically do. And Jeana, I look around, and it is panda overload. There are 5 stuffed pandas on one shelf. There are 2 panda cups on the desk. And then on the bulletin board, there's a drawing of a panda with a pink tummy. And I'm like, this is not just like a passing glance at a panda. This is a room filled with pandas. And it's not my sister's typical room. So I told her the story, and she was just blown away by the lineup of events. And then Kayla, who's like really dialed into this, my daughter Kayla, notices as we're walking down the hallway that there's like kids have their names on the wall on cute little, it looks like pencils with your name on it. And she goes, Millie. And I don't think there are that many kids named Millie. I just don't. So that says Millie.
Cute grandma name.
Yes. So there's my grandma's name. And then we're driving home, and Kayla turns, and there's a car dealership, and the name is Morris, my grandpa's name. Do you see a lot of Morris car dealerships in the world? I just don't. So I loved all this. I was feeling all of it, but there was like this little part of me that was like, it wasn't a purple panda. I don't know why I'm being so difficult. It was so many pandas and it was their names and it was all the next day from when I'd said it. So this is Tuesday. And then on Wednesday, the twins go to Ruben's families to play games and hang out. And I get a text and they're playing a game. And Kayla sends me a picture in the game of a purple panda. And I was like, that's it. This is it. Like, this is so many things back to back to back. And I truly felt that it was beyond coincidence. It was such a surplus of pandas. The specificity was insane. Their names were there too. It was beautiful. So I am just still kind of like beaming over the fact that I got this really specific sign very quickly during a time when my grandparents are very much front of mind for me and I'm feeling them so deeply.
I love, well, first of all, a surplus of pandas was a sentence I never thought that I would hear you say, or a phrase I never thought I'd hear you say. So I'm so glad I got to experience that with you.
I just texted you all the panda pictures.
Yeah, I saw, it's real. There were so many pandas. I mean, like, I also, you may or may not know, dear listener, that Rachel and I are in fact quite woo-woo. When my dog passed away, Maverick, the love of my life, at 13 years old this summer in August, I told, oh God.
I don't think you told me this.
No. So like the day before he passed, like we were able, he ended up having cancer and he was having seizures and we were able to, put him down at home. So have the vet come to our house so that he never had to go through like the turmoil of being like at the vet for his last moment or leaving. And so like we had our last day together because the vet wasn't coming over until 6. And so in our last like couple hours together, I'm getting like so choked up saying
I know, hon, I see it.
No. But in our gross. Hold on, I got to get this like sad out of my throat. Not gross that I'm crying, but gross that it's turning my voice.
Sad sits in a very uncomfortable vocal place. Yes.
Get out of the frog. So I'll just be sad. It's fine, throat. So in the last couple hours I had with him, I just remember like holding his little paw and telling him that I wanted to see him as a deer. So to just like send me signs by showing up as a deer. And that next day there were like 6 deer in our backyard. So I believe in all of this too. Yeah, I think and also like if it's a coincidence, who cares? Like who cares? Because it brings us meaning.
Yes. And I'm with you. There will always be people who are like, oh, that's just a really goofy coincidence that the deer were there after you asked for it, or that there was a classroom overtaken by pandas and their names were on the wall and yada, yada. Like, that's fine. It feels differently for me. Yeah. And I'm more than okay with that. Everybody can interpret and feel how they want to feel about it.
Yeah, I agree. I also think like if you're not a spiritual person and like spoiler, we're talking in this episode to Shabnam Mogharabi, who talks a lot about the soul and also a lot about life's big questions through her work at SoulPancake and then also into Soul Boom, where she works with Rainn Wilson on tackling big questions and from a spiritual perspective. She talks a lot about this in the episode, but I also think that there are other ways to come at it that she mentions too. Like you can look for meaning in the world through awe. Like Dr. Keltner, the author and researcher, talks a lot about like awe being this incredible other emotion. Like I look at the moon and I'm like awestruck when it's a full moon. I think it is wild that there's a rock in the sky that our sun lights up. Like,
yes.
How wild is that?
I think I'm with you. There's different lenses that you can adopt, and some will feel more natural for people than for others, I suppose. But I like to lean into awe. I like to believe in something greater than myself. I like to believe that there's mystery. I once had a medium tell me about my grandpa Maury, that he was conveying this line that life is so much more mystical and magical than you can ever imagine.
Oh my God.
And that has really lodged with me for the past 4 years since I heard it. And I just want to celebrate the magical and the mystical and believe there's more going on than we might be attuned to in our 3D lives.
Yeah. Thank you, Grandpa Maury, for that message. That's lovely.
Oh, and Jeana, I always think of him because he loved a microphone, loved a speech moment,
Did he?
big talker. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like, I very much feel that I am sort of embodying his spirit in this idea of having conversations with a physical microphone. It is something that I think he would just be beaming about.
He's probably just hanging out in that room with you, honestly.
Well, I do have a picture of him on my desk. So yeah, he's right over there.
He's right here. Yeah. Well, on today's episode, we have the distinct pleasure of speaking with Shabnam Mogharabi. She's an entrepreneur, an author, a journalist. She has 20 plus years of experience using media to spark meaning and human connection. So she is obviously perfect for this podcast. She's co-founded the uplifting content studio that I loved, the corner of the internet, SoulPancake, with actor Rainn Wilson. He's also an author. You may know him from The Office. He is very different from his character, by the way, where she was CEO for nearly a decade. Under her leadership, SoulPancake created series like Kid President that you absolutely knew and loved, My Last Days, The Science of Happiness, and they amassed more than 1 billion video views. So we're so happy to have her here today. Here we are with Shabnam. Shabnam, we are so happy to have you here on the Connection Code with us. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. Hello, ladies.
Hello.
Rachel and I have been talking about this episode for quite some time because, well, one, you're a wonderful contributor to communities, and you also have focused your life on creating meaning, belief, and connection through the work you've been doing for the past couple of decades. So can you tell us a little bit, for sort of an easy palate cleanser, a little bit about how you ended up dedicating your life in a lot of ways to the soul?
Yeah, the soul. All of my ventures seem to have the word soul in it. I even advise companies that have the name soul in it. So my background, actually, I started out in journalism, and I went into that career because my mom and dad, are Persian immigrants who, unlike many Persian immigrants, said, you don't have to be a doctor or a lawyer, but you do have to do something that is good for the world and, is of service, and has real skills. You can't just study something that has no real skills. So I studied journalism because I thought, okay, I can explore stories and learn more about people. I'm pretty curious. And I was like, this is going to be a great path for me. And after a few years of working as a journalist, I realized I didn't really like telling stories about the hard stuff and heartbreak. And really the tipping point for me was I won a really big award about a story I reported about high drowning rates of minority kids. And I talked to all these parents who had the worst thing that can possibly happen to them happen. And then I won an award for this story where I sat in the most grief-stricken moments of people's lives. And I was like, this doesn't work in my brain. I went into this field wanting to be of service. How can I do this differently? And by a series of crazy chance events, I got connected with this actor, Rainn Wilson, and we started this company that was all about the other side of those kinds of stories. How do you tell stories that are more about what humans have in common and what uplifts us and what makes us see light and not darkness and gives us hope? And it was so fulfilling, and it made me feel like, oh, wow, I could tell stories. I could still tell stories, but I could do it in a way that uplifted people and not just sat in the heaviest moments, which is frankly what so much of journalism felt like. And so I ended up spending then the next 15 years, bringing me to here, doing that kind of work, telling stories about the soul and about what gives human beings hope and connection, and reminding us that we frankly have a lot more in common than we have that separates us.
I have something I want to ask you about, but this is making me think of another pathway, which is, did you grow up in a particularly spiritual or religious household? Has this been something that's been innate within you, or was it very much part of the culture of how you were raised?
It was part of the culture of how I was raised. My parents were religious refugees from Iran. So they're Baha'is. They were born Baha'is and escaped Iran in the late 70s, early 80s when the revolution happened there. The, kind of fundamentalist Islamic revolution happened. And so Baha'is were persecuted. My grandfather was disappeared from a Baha'i meeting and never seen again 45 years ago. So it was a really hard time. And so my parents left Iran, and I grew up as a Baha'i, and we prayed and we went to, Sunday school and all of the things. I do feel like in my 20s, I kind of left faith. I was like, oh, I don't know if, I don't know about faith. I don't know if that's right for me. I just believe this thing because my parents believe in it. And then in my late 20s, I was going through all this stuff career wise where I was like, I don't think I want to do this anymore. And then I simultaneously called off an engagement. And those two big kind of things happened. And I found myself praying all the time. And so I was suddenly like, oh, wait, maybe there is something bigger in the universe that I'm drawn to that I've kind of ignored for the last 10 years. And so kind of came back to faith in my late 20s.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
The
Yes.
cycles you go through. Yeah.
I think Rachel and I could pull at a million threads with you based on what you were talking about too. I do actually, I want to chat about calling off your engagement and that sort of spiritual low. In that moment, as you're thinking through this, did the act of calling off the engagement and sort of coming back to spirituality, did it feel more connecting or isolating to you, and why?
It was both.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the reason it was both, so I was in a really unhealthy relation. It was not a healthy relationship. And the kind of culminating moment was I lost my engagement ring. And it was most healthy couples would like laugh about that or be like, well, shit, our wedding is good. Sorry, I don't know if I can curse.
You can always swear all you want. No.
Well, shit, our wedding has to cost less now, right? Because we lost the engagement ring. That was not what happened in my relationship. It was like a full blowout. I got lectured about, like not getting it resized. Like it was just not a good relationship. And when I called it off, I got angry. I found myself praying a lot for just peace of mind, but I also found myself really angry with God and the universe. Like, why was this person put in my path? Why is this happening to me? And so it was this like wrestling of, I felt much more connected to faith because I was finding comfort in praying and like, maybe there was a reason for this, but then I also felt really disconnected and lonely because this thing was really hard and I didn't know how to talk about it. And my mom was actually really happy that we called it off because she never really liked him, but was going with it because I said yes. So here I was like devastated, but like people in my life were happy about it. But then I was also finding comfort in faith. It was like this, my brain couldn't handle how both connected and disconnected and lonely I felt at that time. So it was definitely both. It was definitely both.
And thank you for sharing that. You spoke about it a little bit on a recent podcast episode that Jeana and I listened to, and you speak in such an articulate manner about something that is so emotionally difficult. But you said a couple things on this podcast episode, and I collect words like gems. I love when somebody has a really strong phrase or a mantra. And you said, I'm looking at this up, the mess does matter. And you talked about rejection as God's protection. And so I wanted to know the origin of how these phrases came into your life, which ones you still live by, how they've served you, and maybe you could impart some more that we could hold on to.
Yeah. So the mess does matter actually was during that period of time, during kind of the engagement falling apart, the career low of what am I doing? I'm winning an award for grief. Like this doesn't make sense. That was all happening. And I had, someone recommended to me reading Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. And if you've not read it, it is a brilliant book. And it's all about, this Holocaust survivor and how he saw the highs and lows of humanity. And in it, he talks a lot about just suffering and the reason that suffering exists. And I had also a little while after that read Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. And she talks about the messiness of life. And I just was like, I kind of had this coalescence in my head of like, okay, this messiness does matter. Like, the messy stuff is actually what makes the good stuff more meaningful. And it also is the stuff that creates wisdom. right? The mess is what creates wisdom. You know, you're not born with wisdom. You look at a 17-year-old and you're like, wow, I was an idiot when I was 17 and I didn't know what I was doing. And then you get into your 40s, like I am now, and you're like, I feel so much wiser and more grounded. And it's because you've gone through the mess. Like you were in the yucky, muddy mess and you suddenly came out of it and were like, oh, wow, I know so much more about myself. I know so much more about just how the world works, why things happen to us, what you can learn from it. And the mess is what creates wisdom, and the mess is what matters. And so I think that really happened in my late 20s. The rejection is God's protection is actually a recent one. It's like a recent mantra of mine. And the reason is actually Carla, our mutual friend Carla, who has been a guest.
Thank you, Carla, for this intro. Yes.
Yes. So mutual friend Carla Pinheiro Sublet, she introduced us and has been on your podcast. So I went through, and she talked a lot about this, her career transition. So I also went through a couple of years after I left SoulPancake, which was the company that we built together and with Rainn and had a lot of success. After that, I said, oh, I'm going to get out and get a big media job. And I had dozens of conversations that went nowhere. And then I also had several conversations, about 7 of them, where I had 6, 7, 8, 9 rounds of interviews. I would be a finalist. I was presenting to boards, to CEOs, and then I wouldn't get the job. And it was a solid year and a half of feeling unhireable, like feeling like how is this possible? Like I have had great wins in my career. Like, how is this possible that I'm unhireable? And I remember calling Carla because she was kind of going through a similar period and being like, I don't know what I'm doing. I feel like I'm banging my head against the wall. And she said, you know, maybe rejection is the universe protecting you. And I was like, oh my God, maybe you're right. And I called all these recruiters I was working with and said, I'm done being rejected. There's something else meant for me. And I spent the next 6 months saying rejection is God's protection. I am not meant to have a full-time job right now. And then the last 2.5 years has been thriving between Soul Boom and a book and documentaries and like all of these amazing projects coming to fruition. And I was like, oh my God, rejection really was God's protection. I was meant to be doing something different. And yeah, it's my new mantra. It's my new mantra in life.
You just gave me goosebumps, which is always my body's radar of like, this is something, pay attention. Yes. Yeah. Wow.
And yeah, it was a weird time. It was a weird transition time career-wise. It was just a weird, and it was part of the mess, and the mess matters, but it was a different stage of life too, because I was married, I had kids, I was like, I got to earn income. Like this is what is happening right now. So I felt a different level of pressure as well. So it was really hard. There's a lot of therapy sessions around processing, like, okay, if I let go of this big next job, what does that mean for my family? What does that mean for my career? And can I build something else? Is God gonna like unfold something? And I use the word God, but you know, if you don't like the word God or that feels too woo-woo for you, you can say the universe, you can say whatever, you know, forces out there you feel are cosmically guiding your life, astrology, whatever you want to call it. But I do feel like there are these forces, and it was scary. It was scary to say, okay, I guess I'll trust that something else is out there for me right now. And there was.
Yeah. And let's pop back to SoulPancake for a bit. Before we hopped on tape, mostly because I just want to fangirl on you for a little bit here. I just remember being so inspired by the way you approached the landscape of media at SoulPancake. You had Kid President, you had The Science of Happiness, My Last Days, all of these incredible, and also written content pieces too, these incredible stories that you told. So can you talk us through sort of how your view of humanity changed while you were at SoulPancake?
Yeah. Well, when we started doing, so SoulPancake's original mission was chew on life's big questions. It was like, there's all these big questions out there. Like, why are we here? You know, what is art? What is love? Like, there's all these big questions that humans grapple with. And how can we tell stories that, you know, are about that? And that was kind of our original mission. But I think over time, as we saw what audiences responded to, what kinds of videos went viral, what things resonated with people, I think what we realized is that the two big threads were joy and connection, right? Anytime we made a video or a series that was about people connecting in surprising ways, parents connecting with the step parents in their children's lives, or, separated dads reconnecting, or, adoptive parents connecting with the embryo donor that formed their child. Like anytime there were surprising connections, those videos went viral. People loved them. People wanted to share them. So anytime we showed how even completely disparate people could connect and find connection with each other, those videos really sung. And then the other thing that was surprising to us was that just any video that celebrated joy in some way, whether it was unabashed joy like Kid President, or it was joy in the hard things like My Last Days, where you've got a terminal cancer diagnosis, and yet these people were finding ways to just live their life to the fullest and bring as much joy into their life as possible, even in that dark moment. Those two things over and over again, like, it surprised me how much people truly craved connection stories and stories that gave them joy and hope. And over again, we were like, oh, chew on life's big questions, chew on life was the tagline and this mission. But at the end of the day, that's what it came down to, is like, those were the stories that went viral. Those were the stories that resonated, that got tens of thousands of comments, that, we got to 1 billion video views on our content. And I think the vast majority of those came from people wanting to share content that made them feel like they were part of one big human story.
Can I share an observation just as an outside lens on your story?
Yeah. Okay.
Because I just find this interesting. So you're working with SoulPancake and you're sort of in your purpose, right? Elevating stories of joy and connection, helping people feel really good about how humanity can come together. It feels very in line with sort of your spiritual zone based on how you described it. Then you're like, oh, I'm going to go get a big executive media job, and it doesn't work. And that would sort of be out of purpose, right? It would be like office, bureaucracy, structure, all the things that make sense on a resume, but to kind of take you into a different lane. And then it doesn't coalesce. And then you go back into the spiritual realm and have this amazing soul workbook and are doing all these things that are right back in the connecting humanity, big questions, deeper meaning, and it's flowing. And obviously we look at media companies and they're having a shit time. So it does feel like you might be a living case study of rejection being God's protection. Just an outside vantage point.
It's so true. And it's so funny that you say the like purpose element of it, because I talk about this all the time, how having such a clear purpose at SoulPancake is what differentiated it. And I genuinely feel my purpose in life is to tell stories that give people hope. That is my entire purpose in life. And then I went out and I was trying to see like, okay, but can I do that on a bigger platform with more resources than this and that? And of course, I'm ambitious. Again, oldest daughter of immigrants, right? I'm like ambitious and driven. So how do I then get the next big job? And I got kind of pulled into, but I need this thing in order to make that purpose bigger and more effective. And that wasn't actually the case, because I have now come to realize that moving the hearts and minds of the, 10,000 people who buy that book is just as impactful as running a department at Netflix or something like that. I think that impact has to start small and grow up. The top-down way of creating change has not worked. It's never worked. And so I've come more to accept that, like, I don't actually need that thing that I thought I needed to keep doing the work that matters to me. Yeah. I know, the things you learn again in your 40s, all the wisdom comes.
40s? I mean, Jeana's on the cusp of turning 40, and I
literally turned 40 on Sunday, and I had
happy early birthday.
Thank you so much. I was texting with Rachel on the day when I was like, because my husband and I delayed having kids, not to like dump, because this is about you, not me, but my God, we delayed having kids. And so it's sort of like, we're at this point where like, do we have children? What's the meaning of life? What do we do with the next few decades of our life? So I was having this pit of despair. Like, I can't believe I'm turning 40. What does it mean? When Rachel and I were texting. Anyway, keep going.
And I was trying to say,
late in life,
yes,
Mom, just so you know, I got married when I was 39. I had my first child at 40. I had my second at 43 with the help of fertility treatment.
Great.
So I am a fan of being a late in life mom, I will say, because I do feel like I am more patient and grounded and prioritize, I think, the more human things now than I think if I had been a mom in my 20s and 30s.
Ooh, I am glad we're having this conversation today. I would also like to know, sort of what parenting has taught you about like the soul, about meaning.
Yeah.
What has that done for you too?
I think parenting has confirmed for me that every human being is a soul. I see, as much as you want to say that nurture has a big impact on kids, nature is real. Nature is real. My children are polar opposites raised by the same parents, like polar opposite human beings, polar opposite personalities, emotional capabilities, all of it. Yet there is a joyful wow, wonder, beauty, curiosity in their little minds and hearts. A lot of crazy selfishness too, because that's part of being a child. But there's so much wonder and curiosity in how they experience the world. And it is magic. It is truly magic to watch a child kind of see things for the first time. Like I heard someone on a podcast the other day saying like, here's the crazy thing about kids is like, if you take them out into the world and a dragon flies down from the sky, because they are completely, really, truly a blank slate, they're just like, this is a thing that happens. This is the thing that happens. Dragons fly down from the sky. As adults, you're like, that's nuts. That's not a thing that should happen. But kids are like, well, of course, this is what happens in this weird world where every single day something is new. Right. And so I was like, that's exactly what it is. That's exactly what having children has done is like, it makes me go like, wow, we really are like these like pure little souls that are experiencing wonder and magic on a daily basis, trying to make sense of this crazy world that we've structured around them. And it's really it's fascinating. It has made me more convinced that we are all born with this like blank soul of a blueprint that we need to like develop over time.
Yes, I echo so much what you're feeling about parenting, because I have these twin girls that Jeana knows well who are also comically different. But, and I know not everyone's so woo-woo, and I always want to do like a tiptoe to see if I'm saying too much and making people feel very alienated. But I see like one medium a year. I kind of like to do a check-in with a different medium.
One medium.
I mean, I would love to do more, but they are not inexpensive, these mediums, the good ones. Yeah, so I treat myself to like one a year. It is crazy to me how many times it has come up that I have been on this carousel ride with these twins before. Like, I really believe that you have the children you're meant to have, and there's lessons you're meant to teach each other, and I'm learning from them and they're learning from me, but that we're still figuring it out, and that there's some real depth and complexity in those relationships, but a lot of beauty too.
Yeah, there really is. I feel I always wanted a really big family. So I had frozen my eggs. I was like, I'm going to have kids. But I started late in life. And so I'm like, I feel lucky that I got the two that I did. But yeah, I would have, if I could have, would have had a whole brood, because I find magic in children. I really do. And it's true. It is true. They teach you a lot. I feel like I have had to, I thought I'm so well adjusted. I've done therapy. I've had all the things. Like I feel really grounded and like, and I'm big on woo woo. So you can never be too woo woo with me.
Oh, great.
But I'm big on woo woo.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. I'm big on woo woo and energy, and like, the energy you bring is the energy that comes around you. Like I'm big on all of this stuff. And then you have children who challenge literally every strength and tool that you think you have in your arsenal. And then you're just like, oh, wow, this is really, truly like here to teach me this lesson in this one thing that I still haven't dealt with or learned how to It is wild how they just find those like pressure points. And you're just like, okay, got to learn this one now too.
Yeah. Like when an 11-year-old turns to me and says, don't use that tone with me. And I'm like, I choose the tone. I made you. I get the tone.
What was the tone?
Shira, I need you to. You know what I mean? Like that. Yes.
In fairness.
Jeana, she deserved the tone.
Oh, wait, I know. Kids, man. I'm curious though. So you've mentioned in the past that you've studied positive psychology.
Yeah.
You've delved into it in one way, shape, or form. And it is super interesting. How has that helped you in this sort of iteration of your life and your work with meaning and the soul? And also, how has it helped you as a parent?
Yeah. So I got a certification in positives. I've always been fascinated by just the space of positive psychology, just because I feel like oftentimes we assume psychology is about what's wrong with us, right? And I was like, no, but there's actually a lot of people who like got their stuff together, and I need to understand. I need to understand how they work. So I've always been curious about it, and I got this certification through Coursera, through the University of Pennsylvania's like PERMA framework. They've got a whole framework on what creates flourishing and a good life, and so I kind of have studied this and read a lot of books about it. And part of the reason was actually because so often in the SoulPancake days, we would go in to pitch what we were doing and people would be like, yeah, but soul, you know, that. And I wanted to be able to say like, no, there's actually a lot of science behind the stuff that we do. The Science of Happiness series actually came from, I had read a whole book by Martin Seligman about the science of positive psychology. And I was like, wow, some of these experiments would make great videos. And so that whole series came from wanting to bring some of these tools of positive psychology to life and through like scientific experiments that were entertaining. And anyway, so now in this chapter of kind of being more overtly talking about spiritual tools, which is what Soul Boom does. So Soul Boom, which is kind of Rainn's new company that I'm helping to advise and shape and think about the strategy around, is much more overtly spiritual. And it's much more overtly about like, how can we apply spiritual tools to our modern lives? And in doing that, I was like, I don't want it to just be, here's lessons from spiritual wisdom. Like I want to marry science with it, because I think people learn in different ways and people will accept ideas into their hearts and minds in different ways. And science is something that so many people are like, right, but show me the data. Is there actually proof of this? Like, I don't want it to just be woo woo. And so I think it's been a really important tool as we've moved into more of the like overtly spiritual conversations to say, oh, also a lot of this is grounded in positive psychology. Yes, you know, the Buddha and Christ teach about love and compassion, but also altruistic giving is a wildly good thing for our brain chemistry, right? And so, you know, there's science that says that compassion is good for us, right? So it's really helpful, I think, to talk about both sides, the yin and the yang of these tools and how effective they can be. And yeah, I think they've also been really powerful with helping with my kids. Like I talk about in the Soul Boom workbook, we have a thing called beauty emergency, where basically like your goal is to like find beauty around you, right? Whether that's a crack in the sidewalk or a painting or a flower or like some beautifully designed, you know, shelf at a store. Take a picture of it. And then the goal is to share it with people, right? Like start a beauty thread with friends. Well, I actually do it with my kids, right? Like I'm constantly like beauty emergency. And like we stop and like look at the beautiful flowers or look at the lights for the Christmas display or whatever. My son does it all the time where he's like, Mom, beauty emergency. 90% of the time it's a fire truck. 90% of the time, the 5-year-old.
They're stunning. They're so stunning.
They're stunning. Yes. Fire trucks are the most beautiful thing in the world.
Yeah.
So 90% of the time it's a fire truck, but he's like, it's teaching the brain to notice beauty. And guess what positive psychology tells us? Recognizing beauty, being open to beauty and wonder and awe is really, really good for our brains. It's really good for them. And so these aren't just, to me, spiritual tools. They are grounded in a lot of science. And I think that that's helped with parenting. And I think it's also helped with the digestibility of these kinds of topics with people who are not as woo-woo as I am.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, absolutely. I think the science is a very important companion part of it so that people can feel like it's not just, Jeana and I like this analogy of the balloon and the string, and that you kind of need both. And so the science is the important string. Yeah. I also want to compliment you on the beauty emergency, because when I heard that, I thought, I love the reframe of a term that's so typically negative. Oh my God, I'm having a beauty emergency. My makeup looks terrible. My hair's awful. You know, it's always kind of like this women's magazine 1990s thing of a beauty emergency.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I want to do this with my kids and go find things that are, again, so lovely to look at, that make us feel really good. I saw a cardinal today, like there's a beauty emergency. Yes. Beautiful reframe. You also said something that I found so resonant about the altar of influence and the tradition of the ofrenda. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Yes. And I feel really lucky because I work with a company called Siete Foods, and they do ofrendas in the office. And my sister is very connected to Hispanic culture, and she loves this tradition. And I think the idea of honoring those who have passed, or altar of influence, if you want to explain it, honoring those that still exist, is such an amazing ritual. And I wanted to hear about it from you.
Yeah. So one of my favorite movies is Coco. I absolutely love
The best.
this movie. It's the best movie. And
A
it just
weeper.
moves me to tears.
Yeah.
Yes, I am moved to tears every time I watch it. I actually watched it with my 5-year-old the other day, and I like again was sobbing, and he's like, why are you crying? I'm like, it's just so beautiful.
Because of the grandma.
Because of the grandma. Yeah. So
It's always the grandma.
So in the Mexican culture in Coco, the ofrenda is really important. And my understanding is that essentially you die 3 deaths in kind of the Mexican lore. You die 1 death when you physically die, right? The second death is when you're buried in the ground. And the third death is when the last person who knew you says your name. And so I was like, this is such a beautiful idea. It's such a poignant idea. And it's what the ofrenda is meant to symbolize, to keep the names alive of all of the ancestors, to keep them from dying that third death. But I was like, why, when we're alive, do we forget? Like, when I think about, my piano teacher, who I absolutely adored when I was a kid, or like my 11th grade, chemistry teacher, who like was the woman who like made me realize how important science is, right? As a non-science, like I like to write and draw, and right, like I was not the science kid, but made me realize how important science was. Like, why when they passed away, was I like, oh, I want to go write something on their memorial page, etc. Like, why don't we remember that ofrenda that has influenced us, that those people who have influenced every generation and every phase of our life, in the moments that they're around and the moments that they're still with us? Why do we only think of them when they pass or in death? And so the idea of the altar of influence was, can you identify the people who have shaped your values, the people who gave you opportunities, the people who still guide you today and are your North Stars, the people who you go to when you're feeling down or in trouble, right? Like, how do we identify all those people who influence us, whether that was in the past or in the present, and then intentionally making an effort to like connect with them and express gratitude to them before they're gone, because they have influenced who you are today. And it was just a way to interweave these kind of ideas. And it's funny, I've connected with a lot of like teachers recently from like my high school and college days. Especially with the book coming out, many of them were writing on Facebook, and I was like, oh, I love Facebook. It's like all of the old school people. It's like, Facebook is like, yes, like, oh, I remember when you were in my class, and I was just like, okay, let's go get a coffee. Like, I should see you, and like talk to you. And I went the other day and I had coffee with my 12th grade English teacher from high school. It was really cute. It was like he was like telling me all the things he's doing in retirement, and I was like, this is awesome, and I love this so much. So yeah, it's a really fun activity. Highly encouraged.
Jeana, can I say for 1 second?
Yes.
This is really speaking to me, because I went on a quest to find my 11th grade calculus teacher, because I was a really struggling math student and she carried me through the hardest year of math. And I tracked her down and we had a lovely email exchange, and I was able to thank her all these years later for her belief in me. And it was like such a full circle moment. So I applaud you for doing this. I think that
I love this.
Paying homage to people who influenced you and helped you while they're alive, while they can receive it, is the greatest gift.
And it's actually really good for our own brains. And this is the thing. We always think it's about the other person when we say thank you. Like, I'm saying thank you so you're appreciated, you're valued, how you contributed. But it's like, actually, all the science tells us, like, when we express gratitude for others, it reminds us that we have a network of people. We're connected. We have people who have supported us. Like, it's actually really good for our own brains. And we forget sometimes that it's kind of a selfish thing to do too. It's really good for our brains.
I feel like that's true for everything in positive psychology. There's sort of like a bi-directional relationship for all of it, because it's sort of like those social relationships. Like, yes, you're reaching out to someone and it's good for them, but it's also so good for you. Oh, I love this.
You know what the Ben Franklin effect is? So I just learned about this.
Tell us.
So the Ben Franklin effect it's obviously based on Ben Franklin, but the idea was that he did this favor for someone. Someone asked him for a favor. He did this favor for them. And then he was like, I don't know why, but I feel like wanting to do more favors for him. And so scientists have actually studied this now, and it's called the Ben Franklin effect, which is when you do an act of service or you do a favor for someone else, you like them more. Your brain likes them more, right?
Where did I read this? I saw this and I can't remember.
Yes.
Was it in The Art of Gathering?
Maybe it was The Art of Gathering. I don't remember where I saw this either, but I just was reading about it and I was like, this makes so much sense because I'm always talking about service, right? Like living a life of service, finding small ways to notice ways to be of service. It's like something I try really hard to instill in my kids because service is so good for us. Spiritually, we're told that, but also psychologically, we're told that. And I was like, oh, the Ben Franklin effect, that makes sense to me. When you act in service to other people, you like them more. You want to do more things for them.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh, this makes sense. And I was
Oh,
like,
it might have
why
been
have I
Adam
never
Grant.
heard this before?
Did Adam
Oh,
Grant
maybe
have
it
it?
was Adam Grant.
It
Okay.
feels like an ad.
Yes.
I'm
You're going to fact
furiously
check. I know you
Googling.
are. Yes, you are.
Furiously
You can
Googling.
fact. Yeah,
But it is
seriously
really
Google it. I don't have
counterintuitive.
the source, but this
Yeah,
is like
that's
the
okay.
thing that I
You don't
read
need
that
it.
I was like, this is amazing. It makes sense to me.
Let me tell
It's
you.
counterintuitive, but somehow works.
Well, it also it makes a ton of sense in a lot of ways, and there were a bunch of sources, by the way, while I was furiously Googling. So you're not feeding us some garbage.
Okay.
No, you're not crazy. Well, we didn't think you were crazy anyway.
I'm like the Abraham Lincoln effect. No, I'm just kidding.
Is that you were actually a vampire and no one remembered it. My favorite historical fiction of all time was Abraham Lincoln, Vampire Hunter. But we need to talk about the Soul Boom workbook. You've said that your goal is to get this into hundreds of book clubs. I'm so curious. Well, first of all, tell us where to get it and when, and then tell us why you sort of see the collective unity behind the Soul Boom workbook.
Yeah. So Rainn wrote a book in 2023 that I joke I ghost wrote, heavily edited certain sections of, called Soul Boom, Why We Need a Spiritual Revolution. And it was all about kind of making the case for more spirituality in our modern lives. And the number one kind of note that he got from readers is, okay, but how, right? Like you made this case for why we need more spirituality, but how do you actually do that? And so the Soul Boom workbook, Spiritual Tools for Modern Living, was kind of the answer to that. It's really kind of the guidebook that says, okay, if you want to bring more spirituality into your life, how do you do that? Like, what do you actually believe when it comes to God and values and virtues and life and death and suffering and all of these topics? And then it also kind of culminates at the end to then now how do you actually live that out in the modern world, right? And the two big pillars that we kind of landed on was the hardest section of the book to write, was how do you actually take spiritual ideas and put them in action to improve the world or make the world a better place. And what we landed on were the two pillars were service, right? Like how do you actually act with a service mindset in all parts of your life, right? At home, in your neighborhood, at large. How do you act with a service mindset? And then the second was how do you build community? And how do you find your role in community, right? Like what's the best role that you can fit in that? And how do you build community? And so when we were thinking about how do we want people to use this workbook, the thing we kept coming back to is like, we want this to be a book club instigator, right? Like people are gathering, they're debating these questions with each other, they're digging into kind of their spiritual lives, but then also finding ways to go out and be of service together and connect with each other and build community around each other. And so we've actually secured a grant for next year through the Soul Boom Project, which is a nonprofit. Yeah, we've secured a grant to actually go out and do this. So they are helping to fund this initiative where we're going to incentivize people to sign up to found a book club, get 10 members to join. They're going to have milestones, like if they reach certain chapters, if they send us what they're working on, photos of their meetings, et cetera, that they'll get, perks and merch and things like that, but really to try to create some momentum around getting people engaged in these conversations. And so we've gotten this grant secured for next year. We're going to hit the ground running with it and try to build. Our goal is 250, but hopefully we'll get more than that of these kind of clubs built around the idea of like harnessing spiritual ideas in our modern lives. And it's very, very faith agnostic. So what you'll notice in the book, it is pulling from Eastern traditions, Western traditions. It is pulling from, yoga practices, from science, from all sorts of things to really kind of give a holistic, like whatever path feels right to you, identify what you believe, and then try to live out those ideals in action.
I love this. Jeana, I'm already like, who can be in our book club?
I know.
Should we host one at Petite Acres? Yeah. What is this going to look like?
Yes,
I was having the same thoughts. Yeah. My dream, my husband and I are right now building a social gathering and event space in Michigan, which is why I live in Michigan. And in my head, I was like, we should obviously have a book club there
Yes,
for
yes.
this. Yeah. So you got one. I'm signing. Sign me up.
Right.
Rachel, should we have a connection conversation?
Let's do it. Okay,
Let's.
so we always like to close with 3 questions around the theme of connection. And the first question is, who is the last person you connected with?
So you sent me these in advance, so I was trying to think.
I don't
about
want to surprise anybody.
Yeah,
Yes.
no, and I was literally like, who was the last person, like the last new person I really connected with, like on a deep level. And actually the person that came to mind is, so I mentioned my grandfather in Iran was taken 45 years ago at a Baha'i gathering, and he and the other 9 people were never seen again. Well, one of the other 9 people, her daughter, I recently connected with, because my cousin and I are making a documentary about this disappearance in our family, and we just got it financed, and so we're in production in it right now. Well, I just connected with this daughter of one of the members that was part of this group of people that included my grandfather, and she and I have become kind of fast friends. And she is hilarious, and also this amazing archivist. She has been collecting stuff about this group of people for the last 40 years, and it's all
Oh my
sitting in
God.
her garage. We're going out to Scottsdale next week to film with her, and I'm just like, I every time I talk to her, we're joking. I have felt so deeply connected to this woman who is, could be my mother. She's like literally 30 years older than me, but is the daughter of this other individual that was in this group, and we have become fast friends. And she was the person who came to mind when I was thinking about the last connection I made.
I mean, she has been waiting for you. She has been collecting these things, waiting for you to step into her life and know what to do with them.
Yeah.
And her name is Mona Mahmoudi. She is the loveliest human being. And truly, she's just like, well, I'm just sitting here waiting for you guys to come so I can show you all the things. And I'm like, I love you so much.
Yeah. The historian your project needed.
Yes, exactly.
Well, I want to know, if you were to give a piece of advice to your younger self about connecting, what would it be?
It would be the advice that I give to all young kids, young students. I do a lot of keynote speaking, and I speak at colleges and universities. And so often people are lonely. They're like, I don't have a lot of friends. I don't even know how to make friends here. And the number one thing I say is join and show up. And, join and show up, because half the time we don't join, we sign up for things and then don't actually show up. And part of, again, what science tells us is that you're for things to become enjoyable, you have to feel obligated to do them a number of times, right? So it takes, I don't remember the exact number, and I don't want to say the wrong one, but it's like something like 8, 9, or 10 times you have to go to something out of obligation before it actually turns enjoyable for you. So join the book club, join the, dance group, join the affinity organization within your company, join the happy hour, like join. And then actually show up, because showing up is half the battle, and we don't show up anymore. Like, the whole world is actively working to isolate us. I mean, we get in Ubers now and it's like quiet ride, and, we get into the grocery store and it's self-checkouts, and we don't even talk to people anymore. I went to the bank the other day to get something notarized, and it was like crickets, silent in there. There's like no one in the bank, because we all do it on our phones and our apps now. So like every industry is isolating us. If we don't intentionally join things and show up, that's where the magic is. And I did it naturally when I was younger, but maybe not as much as I should have. So if I were going to give my younger self advice, it's like join more things and show up to more things. I think it actually could have saved me a lot of heartbreak, because I maybe would have avoided, like an awful engagement breakup, had I been connected to communities that frankly I felt more value for myself in. So I think that's what I would have told myself. And it's what I tell every young person who talks about how lonely they feel these days. Join and show up.
What a nugget.
This is Jeana's entire life ethos. I think that's a bumper sticker waiting to happen for you, Jeana. I have tween daughters right now who are figuring out how to join things and deciding if they like them enough to keep going. This is excellent advice.
Yep. Showing up.
Don't just, the showing up part of it. Absolutely. Okay. Last question. I feel like you've met a lot of incredible people, but if you have a dream connection, we'd love to know who that is.
So it was actually really funny when I first read that question. The person that popped in my head was my husband, because
Oh,
we're in this phase of life where I have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, and every other night one of them is in my bed, and like we're working opposite hours of the day and night. Like I feel like we're ghosts in the night. And so when I first saw that question, I was like, honestly, right now I'm like, my husband, it would be great to like go to an escape room or something with or something.
do an activity.
Like just a dinner, I don't know, day date. I feel like we are literally ships in the night right now. And it's so hard when you've got young kids to stay connected to your spouse. So that was the first thing that popped in my head. Then I was like, I need a more real answer for that. So then
That's
the
pretty
other
real.
person, yeah, I mean, it was the truth of what popped in my head the first time. But then the other person that I actually thought of was Dr. Becky Kennedy. So I'm a little bit obsessed with her. I'm a little bit obsessed with her as a parenting like expert guru. I have Good Inside and her book and all of that. And I've listened to her podcast, and sometimes I will be in moments with my children where they're having an intense meltdown about something. And I'm like, please channel Dr. Becky Kennedy, please channel her. So if there was one person that I would want to connect to, just so that I could invite her to my house and be like, and now I turn it to you. Anytime
Pass the baton.
Yes. I'm passing the baton to you, my new friend. That would be the other person. I would just be like, I really just want you on speed dial. So when my children are having intense meltdowns, I can be like, and what was that phrase again that I'm supposed to remember to say?
That deeply feeling child.
The deeply feeling child, exactly. All of those, like, isms she has about like, that feels tricky, that I always forget in the moment to use, like all of those lovely isms.
I think that when I was going through the book, you have a moment where you say, this is tricky. I think was your sister going on a date and your mom said something that wasn't so helpful. And you were like, here's how I would do it in my own parenting.
Yes. That was a full Dr. Becky Kennedy channeling moment right there.
I support this so much. I feel like Dr. Becky is the patron saint of millennial moms.
Yes, 100%. 100%.
Listen, I followed Dr. Becky because of Rachel. So as soon as you said Dr. Becky, I was like, yes, obviously, this is perfect for this moment.
This phase of my life, she's really the person that I need.
She's the person.
I'm seeing a mashup, a Good Inside, Soul Boom workbook, collab. Yes.
Yeah. For spiritual and connected kids and families.
I love the tagline. She's already like
tagline. I was ready for you.
We're ready.
Do you have a mock-up? I think you do. Yes.
In my head. I'll get it to you on Canva today. So as we wrap up, tell us anything else you want to share and where people can find you on the internet.
Yes. The only other thing I'll share is it was a joy to connect with you guys. I really, truly love meeting new people who are doing this kind of work. And you guys are talking about everything I love. So I feel like we're kindred spirits. And so thank you for having me on this podcast. I want to express gratitude for you guys for having it and for having me.
Thank you.
And then in terms of where to find me, you can go to shabnamspeaks.com to find out information about me and my speaking events and books and things like that. And then you can go to soulboom.com to learn more about this new platform on spiritual tools for modern living.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shabnam. Oh my God. My face hurts.
I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I swear we are having a streak of just such incredible guests that we finish the conversation and feel the better for it. She was amazing.
Yeah. She told us we were friends off camera and I'm holding her to it.
Absolutely. If somebody gives me a permission slip, I am not relinquishing it. Yes.
Yeah. Put her on my holiday card list.
I love somebody who can mind the big questions, who can dedicate their career and resources to it, but also have a sense of humor and have levity. So it's not all like the heavy, big stuff. It's also sort of laughing about how hard it is to raise kids and you don't get to see your husband sometimes, while still acknowledging that there's some central mysteries that we want to explore. So I'm glad you're getting this workbook. We should workbook together.
Oh, I like that. And Rachel, should we do a show and tell?
Yes. What do you have for me this week?
So my show and tell is actually first and foremost congratulating myself for not losing my mind over the Rainn Wilson of it all, because I'm such a fan of The Office and of just that suite of television shows that came out of it. Because Shabnam deserved her own episode and not me just being like, what's Rainn like? But I do also want to talk about how they became friends, which they chatted through on the episode of Soul Boom that we both listened to. I thought it was really interesting. They first and foremost, Shabnam heard Rainn discussing essentially how he had the same idea as her and was forming a company out of it. And she initially was like, wait, I thought of that. So it was initially this sort of like, I wouldn't call it like they were adversaries, but in her mind, she was like, he's doing the thing I want to do. But then they ended up creating this beautiful friendship, this beautiful working relationship, which became SoulPancake, and now this whole like soul ecosystem. So I just want to acknowledge that friendship can start in all sorts of ways.
Yes. And I can't remember if you've read Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert, which
yeah.
she referenced. Yes. But it reminds me of that part in her book where she believes that creative ideas are in the ether and you have to snatch them. So the fact that they both had this idea and then had to come together and bring it to fruition feels very kismet.
And I totally agree with that. I think they're handed to you, the creative ideas. But Rachel, what do you bring for show and tell today?
I feel so Jeana. I have research. I have an article. I have an expert.
A data?
Okay. Some data. I think, to be fair, I was reading the Skim and they linked to this. So then I went to the article. It wasn't like I was going through Scholastic journals. Okay. This was a Vogue article I read, and it was talking about a 5-3-1 rule for friendship and connection. And I love a rule. I love a numeric system. I'm like, how easy can we get it? So I'm just going to share the 5-3-1 rule. It comes from, I hope I pronounce her name correctly, Cassie Killam. She is a Harvard-trained sociologist, and she wrote a book called The Art and Science of Connection. We should read this. Why social health is the missing key to living. And she devised this little system. Okay. 5. Every single week, you need to spend time with 5 different people or social groups so you can multiply your interactions and integrate more social life in your day-to-day. So your 5 people could be friends, family, neighbors, colleagues, acquaintances. So I feel like once a week you hit 5 disparate individuals. Okay. The number 3, every month you need to give yourself at least 3 deeper interactions with people from your close circle. And she says those are the people with who you take your social mask off. Mm-hmm. So I feel like that's attainable, like 3 times a month, go deep with somebody that you care about. Mm-hmm. And then the 1 is that every day, this feels like the higher lift, but in a good way. Every day, devote an hour or so to social interaction. It can be small and fragmented. This reminds you where they say you should walk 60 minutes a day, but it doesn't have to be 60 consecutive minutes, like a little here, a little there. So it could be that you need to meet your daily social needs with chatting with your workout instructor, small talk with a neighbor, call your brother, and all these little actions can add up to your 60 minutes every day, your 1 hour a day.
I feel like this needs an app for tracking. Like this, I would track this, but I would need to start a timer. You know, I'm talking, I'm having an interaction.
I am positive in your line of work. That sounds so formal. I bet you're hitting it, no problem. You talk to so many people, but I do think it's something worth keeping in mind, like the 5-3-1, and just gut checking with yourself. Am I leaving the house? Am I communicating with other people?
I love that. Well, this has been another episode of The Connection Code, a podcast about friends, connections, work, and everything in between. This is a production by 2 friends, Rachel Gilman Rischall and Jeana Anderson Cohen. You can follow us on Instagram and on LinkedIn. Just search for our full names. We'd love to connect with you there. Thank you for listening. Thanks to Ben Cleaver for editing this podcast. And thank you so much to Shabnam Mogharabi for being on the show today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.